Hello, and welcome to Unsheathed with your hosts, Kyell and K.M. Hirosaki. We hope that you enjoy the program. Please stick around afterwards. There'll be cake and blowjobs.
Hi, welcome to Unsheathed number 70. I'm your co-host, Mountain Bunker Fox Kyell Gold.
And I am other co-host, not so cold otter K.M. Hirosaki. Welcoming you officially to the now geriatric Unsheathed podcast.
I know, we qualify for Social Security now, I think, or something.
You know, it was...
wait, they raised the retirement age again.
Again?
Just now.
Well, considering that we're recording, I guess we're not retired.
That's true.
But no, it was about 2 days ago, I was listening to... I was listening to our interview with Unfurled.
Oh, yeah.
I was just thinking about how we were recording episode 70 coming up, and I'm like, wow. It blows my mind that we've now done 70 of these.
I know, or will have done in an hour or so, yeah.
Not including the presents, which we have also done.
Yes, this is all very cool. You guys should go check out the Unfurled interview, by the way. Mm-hmm. It's some 6 months old, but it's still relevant.
Yes, I went back and listened to it to make sure.
Hirosaki still has not finished Summerhill.
No. I mentioned this on my FA journal, but I said, it's funny because you listen to it, and I'm talking about my goal is to finish writing Summerhill by the end of the summer. And that's still true for completely different reasons.
Just another year's rolled around on the calendar.
Just a different summer.
Yeah, that's fine. I also did an interview with Red Furrows while I was at Further Confusion. There was an audio podcast thing that I think he's going to try to assemble, and I'll post something when that's up.
Okay.
Speaking of which, Further Confusion is now firmly in our rearview mirror.
Yes.
It was a good time.
It was a great time.
I can safely say a good time was had by all. I was really encouraged because, just to start off with, I mean, there's a bunch of stuff we want to talk about, but just the attendance at the big writing panels.
Yeah.
The ones that we did on novel writing, character journeys, and making editing fun. We had a packed room for those, and
for all of them.
And the adult furry fiction one you and I did was 10 o'clock at night, 8 o'clock at night. And,
it was 8 o'clock, yes.
And it was still 2/3 full, that room.
Yeah.
And it
with
was
bonus drunk people.
With bonus drunk straight people. They're so funny. They're so cute when they try to clue in. It's but it was funny too, because I remember attending an adult furry fiction panel years and years and years ago, and I felt like it was just full of people who kind of showed up on the off chance that somebody would, say the word cock, and we got some really good questions about writing adult fiction, and people got kind of personal. Someone asked me about my personal life and relationship with family and friends as regards my adult fiction, and if you want to hear the answer to that, you'll have to come to a future panel.
Yeah, I thought we had a good rapport on that, and that we didn't just sound like our podcast. I thought we sounded sufficiently, educatorial or something. Well,
our podcast is hardly about adult furry fiction anymore these days.
And we have such a great name.
I know. But something that occurred to me, I was writing back to a fan about who was writing to thank us for doing the panels that we did. And it occurred to me that, being a gray muzzle and having been in the fandom for 20 years now, what the state of writing in the fandom right now kind of reminds me of the state of artwork in the fandom about 15, 16 years ago.
Right.
Where there were art shows, there were kind of a few people, mostly they were sort of like amateur cartoony kind of people. There wasn't really a lot of what you'd call fine art.
Mm-hmm.
It was just sort of, hey, I drew this furry cartoon, it's kind of cool. And, people would pay $20, $30, $50 for it.
Yeah. My roommate actually has just picked up, I believe it's Rabbit Valley, is collecting the old issues of Yarf.
Oh, wow.
And so he has volume 1, which is issues 0 through 5 of Yarf from 1990. And I was flipping through it and I'm like, yep, there was certainly art back then.
Yeah, and Tara Smith was the premier artist in the fandom. I remember
bunch of Lance Rund in there too.
Johnny.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I remember being at a convention when Michelle Light visited for the first time and said, hey, this is kind of cool and I like it and I can make money here. But it kind of strikes me that writing's in sort of that same place where we've got a bunch of people that are writing some decent fiction, but over the last 5 years we've been getting a lot better. And it just kind of made me excited that, there's a lot of people that are real enthusiastic about it. And the enthusiasm in writing, hopefully, a lot of them we get a lot of the same questions over and over. Like, I'm not interested in writing my story. And I know there's going to be a lot of people who really want to write something, but don't have the energy or enthusiasm to follow up on it. And, but there's going to be a few writers out there who are going to really spend the next few years developing their craft and honing their craft and figuring out that you can't just write a first draft and throw it up on FA and have everybody, immediately fall in love with it. That, you do revisions and you do editing and you do critiques and you finish something and then, you see all the flaws in it and then you get better and you write something else and you keep doing it because you have to keep doing it. And it just got me real excited for the state of writing in the fandom and what we've got to look forward to in the next 5-10 years. I hope.
I mean, you and I talk a lot about how, the state of writing in the fandom is improving and it's getting, more and more noticeable and taken more and more seriously. But that's true. And I think that was a really apparent fact at Further Confusion. Like, our live show, we were down to standing room only.
Oh, yeah.
And I think, the head count we got, somebody said that we had, 70 people in attendance, which is, 2% of the entire con.
Yeah.
Which, that might sound like 2%. No, that's a lot of people to come to a single event.
And we heard from a bunch of people the next day who said, oh, I'm sorry I couldn't make it. I heard it was great. I wanted to be there, but I couldn't. And, I mean, we probably could have, if we had a room half again as big, we probably could have filled that.
Yeah.
And we could have used a room twice as big. So, something to keep in mind for next year. But, speaking of that, I would like to take this chance to thank the staff at Further Confusion for giving us a chance to do the podcast, for giving us the scheduling to do between us something like 12 panels, I think.
Yeah, the ones that didn't overlap, something like that.
Yeah. We did a lot of panels. I ended up filling in on 4 panels that I wasn't supposed to be on. I filled in for Paul Kidd on one of the panels with Black Tegan. And that was fun, actually. That was a good time. And then I filled in on the Monday panels because I was around on Monday and a few other people were, and they wanted to sit on panels.
I like doing panels, but in the future, I don't think I'm going to do quite so many for the simple reason that I was so busy doing panels that I only went to one panel that I wasn't personally on.
Yeah.
And it's just this is really stressing me out. So I'll probably tone it down a little bit, but, I'll still always make time to do the podcast. I mean,
of course.
I always have to do that.
I think I only went to one panel that I wasn't personally on, but that was the podcast Nuts and Bolts, which Kit was helping host and did a nice job producing that panel as he does the podcast, which basically consisted of him and J-Ot sitting aside and letting Buck Hopper explain audio mechanics to everyone, which was kind of cool. And B-Hop's awesome. He should record that as a lecture and just put it up online somewhere. And I think Kit actually has a recording of it, and we will post it somewhere. In case any of you guys out there are trying to figure out how to do the mechanics of a podcast or how to make your podcast sound better, B-Hop really went through all the options from, you're just doing this on a shoestring budget, you can use this and this and it'll sound fine for audio, all the way up to, I want this to be massively well produced and I need to account for the fact that some people are going to have different vocal range and some people are not going to be trained enough to talk into the mic and so on. But that was cool. And our podcast was awesome.
Yes.
And
oh my God.
I say that as sort of a kudos to everyone who was not us, who was involved in it. I feel like we were kind of there just to facilitate the awesome.
I can't wait to go back and listen to it.
I know. Kit did an amazing job pulling everything together. The guests and the technical help and everything were his doing. The guests, the technical help, Fratus and Jayat helped us set up. Trying to think who else. TJ Fulf brought us Australian Coke Zero, which does not have 0 calories, as I noted on the show, and wine. I think we thanked him on the show. Yes,
I'm actually drinking one of those wines right now, the second of the bottles that thanks to him and Temba Cougar. This is a Wallambi. It's a Shiraz from Hunter Valley. I'm going to actually give it a sip for the first time here.
And while he's doing that, I will note that DJ brought up more books for me. He brought up some books for the live show when he came up with Spike, and I mentioned on the New Year's show that I had read the first Garth Nix book, Mr. Monday, Keys to Kingdom, I think it's called. I think the series is called. And he went out and found Tuesday and Wednesday in the series and brought them for me to the podcast, which was very cool.
Yeah, he also brought me a couple bottles of wine, which I thought was very nice. I think it was him and his boyfriend, I believe.
So what's the verdict on the Shiraz?
It's good. It's very subtle for a Shiraz. I don't quite like it as much as the one I had at the live show, but this is still definitely good. So yeah, thank you very much for that, TJ. Also, TJ, you're very cute, by the way. I just want to let you know that.
Kit, what's your verdict on the Shiraz? Kit says it's very fruity, which is appropriate for this podcast, I guess. The Australian Coke Zero tasted enough like Coke Zero that I didn't remember that I was drinking Australian Coke Zero until I picked it up again and looked at the bottle.
It was just like a kangaroo and an Australian flag staring you in the face.
It was more like everything was in metric.
Oh.
I was like, wait, how many joules am I drinking?
It should be 0 joules.
It should be 0,
no
but it
joules.
Ain't. No, it was like 1.8 calories, but I think Coke 1.8 doesn't scan as well, so. Special thanks, of course, to our guest, Dick Powers. Dick Power or Powers?
Power. It was Power.
Dick Power.
Yeah.
Who not only entertained all of us, but enlightened all of us. Did a great job calling some people on things I'm sure they weren't expecting to be called on. And really illuminated a lot of aspects of storytelling in quick and comprehensible fashion. His whole thing on status exchanges was great, and it's something we forget to mention a lot.
I can't believe we hadn't brought that up.
Yeah, I know.
Like, we must have brought it up in passing at least once.
I'm sure we've mentioned it at least once.
I can't believe we hadn't.
But he really focused on it, which was great.
Yeah, and we demonstrated it quite well.
Oh, yeah.
For much of the actual podcast. It's a learning. We make learning fun.
I loved how our little I see what you did there cards became little status tokens.
Oh, of course.
Although I couldn't remember if they were signals of status being given or taken away. Like, if you give someone that, like, I see what you did there, does that mean, like, you're acknowledging, like, you're asserting your better status over them because you're like,
Or does accumulating more tokens mean that you are accumulating higher status?
Yeah, I don't know. That's interesting. It's a good question. Lastly, I don't remember if I mentioned this at the live show, but I spent a good deal of Friday sitting at the Sofa Wolf table writing things in gold pen in people's books, which was very gratifying. And thank you all to everyone who came by and bought a book or bought many books or just came by and talked to me. There were a couple of those, too, who they'd pre-ordered their books and just wanted to come by and chat. There were, as usual, a couple people who came by with all the books. Although I only signed one copy of Bridges, I think, this con.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was new for FurCon, but I guess everybody's gotten it.
Yeah, because this is the last con on the circuit it hadn't been to.
Yeah, it debuted at Furry Fiesta last year. So, thank you guys for that. I certainly was not bored at any point behind the Sofa Wolf table, and I got to hear some great stories from some people about what the books have meant to them and how much they're looking forward to. And
this 3-ray really speaks to me.
This what?
This 3-ray. Three-way.
I thought you said 3-row at first.
No, it's because I can't talk. It's my fumbly little otter muzzle can't make words.
Aw. But speaking of Furry Fiesta.
Yes.
I believe our plans are set now.
Yes, I am 100% confirmed for yes.
We are going to be at Furry Fiesta. We are going to be doing a podcast there. Kid has the details. We'll let you guys know.
Really, don't worry. This is really only relevant if you're going to be at Furry Fiesta.
Yeah. But, I think a good portion of our listeners will be, so...
Yeah. We get to turn out at Furry Fiesta, too.
Yeah. They like their podcasts there.
Yeah. I hope we're not in the lecture hall again, though.
Yeah, I know.
The lecture hall, I think, was a bit intimidating. People were afraid to talk because they felt like they were in class.
Yeah. I'm anxious to see how their new layout turns out, because they got more space this year. They got, like, the adjacent ballroom to be the dealer's room.
Okay.
They were talking about all kinds of great stuff they were going to be doing, so... Plus, it's the Disco Inferno, so we can break out the leisure suits.
Oh, yes we can.
Or go to Goodwill and buy one.
And then return it.
and then return it. But
isn't that even more Goodwill? Because they can just sell it again?
Yeah.
Unless you
donate it back.
Yeah, I was going to say, unless you just just get your money back. Sorry, Goodwill. I need it more than you.
Well, I mean, the prices are low enough that I don't think it would be outrageous to consider it a rental, and then you just donate it again and say, here, sell it again to someone else. But, yeah, we'll be down there at Furry Fiesta. I'll be signing books at or around the Fur Planet table somewhere. I don't have any new releases for Furry Fiesta, but they'll have they'll have Isolation Play. I believe they'll have a few hardcovers. They will have soft covers for sure, and I will have my gold pen.
Yeah, I probably won't do any book signings since I don't have any books of my own anyway, but if you find me, I will sign something for you.
You're in X and a couple issues of Heat, I think.
I am in X. Well, I'm in one issue of Heat that's been released. I'm going to be in issue 9, but that's not out yet. And I am
9 or 8?
9. 8's already out.
Is it? I thought 7 was the last one that was out.
Shoot, yes. 8.
I think 8's the one that's coming out.
8's the one that's coming out.
Yeah.
Sorry.
With you and me and Foosball in it.
Yes, 8.
All right.
I can't count. The webbing between my fingers blurs the digits.
Really, you're making being an otter out to be a lot less useful than normal.
Curse my thick, unswishable tail and my fingers that are stuck together. What the fuck is up with these ears?
See me, it's just my ears keep flicking against the top of the door frames. And
yeah.
Tail keeps getting shut in doors and stuff.
Nobody notices my ears. No one wants to play with an otter.
Well, how about if you start us off by reading a letter?
All right.
I think.
Dear Unsheathed, my resolutions for 2011 are attend 3 furry conventions, star in some plays at the acting company, and either send in an email or be at the 100th episode of Unsheathed. From Fraudus. Well, Fraudus, you're a third of the way there on your first one.
Yeah.
And hey, if you don't make all of those resolutions, if nothing else, we made you eat grasshoppers.
Yeah. Which was pretty cool. I think I tweeted a photo of that.
That's cool. Foxes eat bugs anyway.
Oh, yeah.
Like all the time.
I gotta find a restaurant
with
around
nachos.
here that serves earthworms.
And mice.
Kit's like, not gonna happen. Wolves eat mice too. He says mice were okay, just no earthworms.
Yeah, he likes the crunch.
I think Fraudus should also start up Fraudus Cast. He was very amused by that.
Oh.
Yeah, Flane was talking about how he was going to start up Anthropodcast or something, or how he regretted not continuing Anthropodcast, and Fraudus said he was going to take it over, so we called it Fraudus Cast. He thought that was funny. We met another fan who was an actor, Nava.
Oh,
He's
right,
a German
right.
Shepherd from Utah.
Yes.
Who wants to get into acting, so good luck to both of you guys.
A lot of Utah furs at the con.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
They're a growing posse.
Yeah, and I mean, like, California's close by, and it's an excuse to leave Utah.
Yeah, exactly.
So there you go.
I've kind of been asking them for like the past year, like, are you going to start up a Utah con? And they seem like they might want to do it, but I think they're kind of worried about getting people to come into Utah.
Yeah, I bet the permits are a nightmare too.
Although you'd think for big gatherings of people.
Yeah, but where are you going to get the booze from?
Yeah, good point.
No booze does not a FurCon make. Or, no, that statement doesn't make any sense.
Well, good luck, Fraudus. Let us know how your resolutions go. We don't have plans yet for the 100th episode of Unsheathed. I think that it feels like that's going to fall sometime around the end of summer. Kit and I might be out at Farrell this year. We're kind of hoping to make it out there. But we'll see. We'll have to see how it goes.
Maybe I can do my end of summer. Oh my god, I actually finished a draft of Summerhill that's worth something spectacular.
That'd be awesome. All right. Hello. I just wanted to put my vote in for a Scott Pilgrim style bumper. Also maybe something in a 60s psychedelic rock style, a la The Doors. Keep up the great work on the podcast. The live show was especially entertaining and informative. I wonder if that was our sports live show. Looking forward to hearing it again. Husky Dog. Our sports live show was, I'm got my fingers crossed because at least one of my Super Bowl picks made it to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, my pick, for those of you who don't remember, back in October, my picks were Pats, Giants, and if you don't follow football, that turned out to be very, very wrong. And
one of your teams didn't even make the playoffs.
I know, and I have to say that the live show, this is going to be going up. By the time you hear this, you'll have heard the live show, I'm sure, where I brag a little bit, tiny bit. I brag about the Patriots beating the Jets, which something I think about like 12 hours after we recorded the live podcast. That game was over, the dust had settled, and football is a stupid sport anyway.
Well, I've kind of backed myself into a corner. I did say that the Steelers would win, but I would not want them to. That's still kind of true, but I don't really want Green Bay to win either. So I think I'm going to end up rooting for the Steelers for the sole reason that then I would at least be right about who won the Super Bowl. Not because I would derive any enjoyment from seeing them win their 7th or whatever.
Just to add to the podcasting dynamic, I will say that I'm personally rooting for Green Bay since I have nothing against them, but I hate the Steelers. So given the choice between team I don't really care about and team I actively dislike, it's kind of a no-brainer for me. Although I have to say, congratulations, Steelers, for crushing the Jets like they deserve to be crushed.
Except for the whole, like, almost letting them back in the game at the last minute thing.
Yeah, which, I mean, actually, both of the championship games were kind of like that. Like,
yeah.
why is this suddenly close at the end?
Yeah, because we were all thinking,
Yeah.
all right, middle of the third quarter, 24-3 or whatever,
Yeah.
we can just go do our podcast and we don't have to watch the rest of the game. And then the Jets scored a touchdown, and then the Jets scored a safety, and then they scored another touchdown, and the Steelers were just kind of like, if we just kind of wait them out, then the game will be over. And, it turned out they were right, but...
Yeah. Well, I actually have to say, like, I actually think that both of today's games are actually kind of boring to watch. Like they weren't
nothing
terribly
real
exciting.
happened.
Yeah.
We had like a couple of real good talents out there, and none of them really did.
And it's
anything.
like nothing's really happening, and like also like I don't really like any of these four teams.
Yeah, I think Kit's rooting for Green Bay too, but
All right, Kit.
that's fine.
You and me, brofist. Should I move on?
Yeah, please do.
All right.
Football's over.
Sup, foxes, otters, and the wolves who get them on the air. Or up into the air. Woo! That's
I was just
right,
going to say,
said
I don't
it.
think I've ever been gotten on the air.
Here's the thing. I recently read this story, like a few moments ago, as of the writing of this letter.
Which was several months ago because we're kind of behind.
I won't name names or post links, but suffice it to say that the story is terrible. Just downright terrible. I was morbidly curious about the story because I thought that the misspelled title was a pun. It was not. This should have tipped me off, but I don't know. I kept going, and I kept reading. And since it was a story broken up into chapters, I know that I'd be missing something by not reading the other chapters, but I didn't want to. There were so many plot holes that the street needs a complete repaving. This is a bad, bad story. A horrible story. But a story that has a positive comment. Someone saying that it's great as usual or something similar. Now, knowing as you do that I posted a journal stating that we, as a fandom, should demand better of our writers, and that accountability for good writing starts with us, those who read stories. The thing is, one should be able to thoroughly communicate opinions as to how to improve, rather than, in the case of this story, the entire thing, as it were. What I'm getting at is that I don't think that I have enough confidence in my critiquing ability to push this author to, at the very least, put the right damn word on his title, so he isn't putting something completely different and misleading the story from the get-go. So what I'm getting at is, how do I critique a story? I realize that much as I might like to, I can't get people to stop and take a serious look at their writing based on my comments, but I know that there are some souls out there, souls that know they need to work on their writing but aren't sure what, that are looking for the guiding hand of critique but aren't able to ever get it because the fandom as a whole is either ignorant as to what makes a good story, or doesn't want to hurt feelings and or be called for trolling. And I want to improve furry artwork by telling people where they went wrong. Sincerely, Ernest effing Hemingway, Knob Slobberer. P.S. Oh, and I'm bi, guys. I knew you were bi.
I know, we've mentioned it on the podcast before, I think, but...
Oh. That's cool. You're welcome to suck dick, Pyro.
Yes.
You have my thumbs
Approval.
up. I'm sure Candrel might,
So this is...
Yeah. Let's
so
answer the
this is
question.
This is a real interesting question, and apart from just the really entertaining letter,
It really is great.
it was great. Yeah, he's awesome that way. It's a really interesting question because we get a lot of people emailing us saying, I can't get good critique on my stories. I can't get anyone to tell me what I'm doing wrong. I can't get anyone to thoughtfully evaluate them. And yet, in a case like this, I can kind of see where he's coming from as far as saying, what do I say? How do I tell the person, start over?
Yeah.
And I think it all depends on the way you couch it. Well, obviously,
Yeah.
that kind of like, duh. But I think if you say, you've got to find something positive about it. I mean,
And not, it's finally over.
yeah.
That's not
I
positive.
mean, something like usually what you can find to talk about with a story like that is you had a neat idea. The idea for one of the scenes, for the setup, for the characters, something like that.
Yeah, like
it
hey,
was.
This
it
one
had a lot of
character
potential.
had a lot of potential.
Right.
I liked what your concept was for this, that sort of thing.
But and then the approach that I kind of take is to start at the most basic level. Don't overwhelm them with everything that's wrong.
But don't cite specifics at the starting gate.
Yeah,
Save that for if they ask for them.
I was thinking more like, don't say, well, you need to work on your spelling and your grammar and your punctuation. You need to learn how to separate paragraphs. You need to learn how to make your dialogue more believable. You need to not put character, random. You need to not have the plot drive the characters. You need to have believable characters. You need to have descriptions that aren't boring and don't go on for 8 paragraphs at a time. You need to, think about higher level story stuff. No, just start with format the story correctly, watch your spelling and grammar, watch your dialogue and punctuation, and, that's the first thing you got to do. And I've kind of reached a point where I know a lot of people kind of say, well, I know, but I can fix that. I want to know what I'm doing wrong with the storytelling. And I'm just like, fix it first.
Yeah.
Show me that you know how to fix it. And then I'll talk to you about your story and about
Yeah.
the rest of the stuff that needs to be done. Because if you can't write, if you can't spell, and you don't know how to conjugate a verb,
Yeah.
and you don't know how to punctuate, then,
String sentences and paragraphs together.
or, using the wrong version of it's or your or where, then, I've read stories where I could not get through them because it took too much work on my part to translate what was on the page into something that my brain wanted to understand.
Yeah, and if it's going to take a reader too much effort to do that, it's going to take an editor too much to do that if you ever want to submit your work anywhere serious.
So, my advice is kind of, you have some interesting ideas, but start with this. This is the first thing you need to do. You need to demonstrate that you can do that, and then we can talk about the rest of the stuff. And authors out there, if you get comments from people saying you need to improve your spelling, you need to improve your grammar, pay attention to it. Don't just say, well, I can do that later. I mean, and there's a difference, too, between someone saying, well, there was one typo in paragraph 3 that really bothered me. Don't worry so much about that. But if people are just like, all throughout, you spell these things wrong, you use these words wrong, you can't punctuate, your dialogue's all misattributed, and, pay attention to it. Improve that, move on to your next revision, and then ask people, okay, what now? And be prepared to go through about, 10 or 12 iterations of what now, what next, because
you're building, each skill builds upon the next one up the hierarchy.
Right. As Dick Power said, writing is hard.
Yes. This is why we do a podcast, telling you how to do it better.
Exactly.
If it were easy, we'd be out of a job.
I'm trying to think of a good blowjob analogy. You don't just, put a dick in your mouth and know how to give a good blowjob right away. But I'm trying to think of the skills. First you have to learn to open your mouth. Didn't you have something on this recently where...
Yeah, I don't know how much to say into the microphone. God damn it, I knew you were going to do this. I was like, he's not going... Oh, God, he is. Oh, he did. Fuck. Long story short, apparently I gave great blowjobs. No,
See, that's one thing otter muscles are good for.
Yeah, well, we can hold our breath long.
But, the point is, you don't expect to be able to do something well just because... You don't be able to expect to give a good blowjob just because you can open your mouth.
Right.
There's a lot of other stuff that goes into that, so to speak.
That's or the one from that one.
It's like, don't belabor this point.
I was going to say it's like the example used in that one Extra Normal video. It's like, do you know how to use a knife to cut a sandwich? It's like, does that mean that you feel like you're, qualified to be a neurosurgery?
Right.
Yeah.
No, exactly.
Yeah.
So, don't just write people off if you get a bunch of people saying, improve your spelling, improve your grammar, because that's the first thing you need to do. Then if it gets to the point, then you're going to get to a point where people say, well, I don't believe the characters. And then you need to figure out how to make your characters more realistic, and so on and so on. And eventually you'll get to a point where people are like, I didn't like your story because it made me sad. And then you've won.
Yeah. So, it's your email.
Is mine?
Yep.
Hey there, Fluffy and Slippery. Hey, I'm Fluffy. I just listened to episode 54. I'm calculating in my head that would be half a year ago. And I'm sorry to hear that the episode got lost. I'm proud to say that my writing has gotten better over the course of the past few months, and I've even submitted something to be considered for Heat Volume 8. It is probably my best work to date, but unfortunately the idea for it came to me at a week before the submission date, so I only had a week to work on it. Anyway, I would like to thank your guest, Lovejoy, for reading my letter on your podcast, and I can only say that I am glad I wasn't talking to anyone while listening to the letter because I was extremely flustered by it. Once again, I would like to extend my thanks to Lovejoy for joining me on my podcast for a fun-filled episode. Now, my question is based on my interactions with Kendrell, who has been helping me to make my stories better. I notice a lot of the things that he talks about when he looks over my story, but I know that if I were to look over one of his stories, that I wouldn't be able to point things out like he does. What do you look for when editing a story, whether it's your own or someone else's, other than just simple grammar mistakes? Do you ever make suggestions for the writer for things that would help make the story make sense or flow better? Thanks in advance for either answering my question or at least attempting to do so. Writer in training, Jay Hopkins, a.k.a. Cy the Cheetah.
So, I mentioned at one point recently, actually I think it was on the interview I was just listening to, where I mentioned that learning how to read critically is a skill that you need to develop.
Yeah.
Basically, what you're saying, you're saying here, he looks over your things, point things out, and you can see them, but you don't feel like you're able to, do the same thing. That's something that you need to be able to train yourself to do. A good habit to get into is to read stories multiple times so that when you're going over them after the first time, you can sort of divorce yourself from getting caught up in the flow of what's going on and analyze the story on a more objective and impartial level. And, once you get good at that, you'll start to be able to pick that sort of thing out in your first read through. But again, I mean, it's a skill. It's one that you have to learn. It's one you have to teach yourself. And you just need to sort of know, okay, what makes for a good story? What are, the rules and the tricks to good storytelling? Where does the story not hit the right notes? Where does it drag on too long? Where, are things rushed where they should be expanded upon? And, some people are better at this than others. And, some people, when they do this, will pick out areas that if you give it to another reader, will pick at completely different things. I mean, like I said, you're trying to be objective, but there is going to be some degree of subjectivity to it.
Right. It's difficult to tell someone, how do you become a critical reader, apart from what you've just suggested. I think really going over the things that Kendall points out in your stories, and if you see them in your stories when he points them out, then look for them in other stories.
Yeah.
Look at some of Kendall's stories. Look at some of the other stories online, and try to figure out. And maybe this would be the easy way to do it. Ask yourself, how would Kendall make this story better?
WWKD.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes it helps to put yourself in someone else's shoes, because then it's not you, it's not your decision.
Right.
It's you're looking at it and you're kind of saying, oh, I know what Kendall would say about this story. But that's coming from you.
Just imagining writing and just like stopping and sighing and going, Kendall would be so disappointed.
And really, the more you exercise that ability, the better you get at it.
Yeah.
It's there's some breakdowns, and I think a good subject for a future episode might be I have a book that I referenced at the writer workshop panel at Further Confusion, which we could bring down, and they have kind of a list of things you can look for specifically to go when you're going through a story, like do the characters all feel real to you, or do they feel like some of the things that they do don't quite make sense? Do the descriptions all give you a complete picture of where they are? Does the dialogue sound true? And you kind of have to read dialogue aloud to yourself first to figure that out. And there's also pacing. Like, are there points in the story where you feel bored and you want to skip ahead? Are there points in the story where you feel like the author skipped ahead and didn't tell you what was going on in between?
Yeah.
Just kind of basic stuff like that. And, like you said, Cam, read through it first just to get the whole I'm discovering this new story thing out of the way. Then stop and kind of assess what you thought about the story. And then go back through it again and try to figure out why you felt that way. Why you really liked this one character, why you had trouble remembering the name of this other one. Like, the hero's love interest seemed to just be not a real person, and you had trouble remembering her name, maybe. Or his name.
Or its name. 7? Sorry.
Inside jokes. Go ahead.
Okay.
Well, I think that...
Yeah, I think we hit those notes.
Okay.
Dear K-Name podcasters, instead of having a question, I'd like to make a PSA to all the writers out there. Writing in the form of a story is considered formal, like writing a memo to your company or a legal document. Unlike an email to a friend or a text message, there are more stringent expectations and rules you have to follow. If you break those rules, you look unprofessional, sloppy, and amateurish. One of those rules is using all caps to emphasize something. All caps works for acronyms or perhaps something like an exit sign. Using it to signify someone is shouting or putting more emphasis on a word in dialogue is incorrect. That's what italics are for, and really you don't even need to use that. The reader will take the info from the sentence without you needing to use a gimmick like the caps lock. This also goes for using more than one exclamation point, or an exclamation point and a question mark. They are just improper and informal. It's bad grammar, unnecessary, and an eyesore. Just a side note, that's not technically grammar. You would not need to see this. You would not see this in a book coming out of a professional publishing house.
Well, you might these days because professional publishing houses aren't as strictly
Yes.
controlled as they
You
used to be.
oughtn't see this coming
Yes.
from a book out of a professional publishing house. Because of the internet and the casualness of language, people think they can get away with this. But it's no different than choosing to not spell check or using LOL in your book instead of using the words laughing. Your book should not read like an email forwarded to you by your dad. 5 exclamation points, 1. Oh my god, my dad forwards me like the stupidest things. Especially things that I don't know why he would think I would want to see them, which is all like, I'm not going to get into it.
No, I know. I think everybody has someone like that who's like, hey, check this out. I found it on the internet.
Like, I really just want to reply sometimes and go, hey, Dad, remember the part where I'm gay? Like, seriously, God. Fuck.
Maybe
Sorry.
I want to see Sarah Palin's Rules for America.
No, no. No. Unless you are intentionally showing an email format. Your powers as a writer, not text gimmicks to... Use your powers as a writer, not text gimmicks, to get across what is happening. Richon. God, your email made me so mad I could swear.
Richon. That'd be a good cuss word. So I kind of go back and forth on the whole italics issue. I think it's possible to overuse italics, definitely.
Yes.
But I also find that there are times when I look at a sentence and I think, a reader could read this in like 2 or 3 different ways, and if they don't know where the emphasis is being put on the words, then that could change the meaning.
Yeah, and if they read it the wrong way, it totally changes the scene.
Right. So, I mean, italics exist because we want to put emphasis on words. And, in fact, the little fun fact, the original HTML markup language tag for italics was EM for emphasis.
Oh, wow. I did not know that.
Bold was strong, so it was an S for strong.
I remember that, yeah.
Or it might have been the whole word strong.
Because S is strike through.
Yeah, but I don't think EM still works for italics. But that originally the publishing markups were EM and strong and stuff like that. So I think italics are okay in moderation, as with anything.
Yeah.
You're correct about the exclamation points. You should only see those within dialogue.
Yeah.
And
the interrobang is not used in actual published writing.
And yeah, definitely not all caps unless you're doing an acronym.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think if there's other stuff that
or if you're August Derleth.
Right. This kind of it's kind of related to our pet peeve about people using like colloquial furry slang in their furry stories. Like,
yeah.
I think I talked about this on a recent podcast because I remember saying Scritchy McFluffytail was feeling all yiffy one day, so he scampered on down to scritch his friend at the local furporium or something.
Down at the 5 and Dime.
Yeah. Frying up a mess o' catfish.
Where he was enjoying a nice pack of delicious nicotine cigarettes, reading his funny books.
So, generally, you should try to write more formally, as you would if you were writing like a school paper or an essay.
Yeah.
And not as if you were writing an email to your BFF or your BF.
Omer.
I wish I was that BF.
Don't use Omer in your stories either.
Yeah. Mer, Scritch, Yiff. None of that. I know. Scritch was technically invented by Charles Schultz, but still.
Yeah, as an onomatopoeia.
Right.
Not as a verb.
So thank you, Rashawn. Nice PSA. We appreciate it. Kit, do we have anything coming up that we need to tell the people about?
I think it was
we
just
mentioned Furry Fiesta. Yeah.
That's I think the only thing coming up for me.
All right. Yeah, WonderCon's way off still, but we will be up there again.
When have they moved that to?
It's first weekend of April again.
Okay.
I'll be up in San Francisco, so if anybody feels like...
Didn't WonderCon used to be in February?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's moved around a lot.
Yeah.
But, yeah, if anybody feels like taking a trip to San Francisco first weekend of April, we will be up at WonderCon at some point doing our Furries in a Comic show.
Yeah.
Which I know the last episode we did that at was 35 because that's the default template when I create MP3s.
Oh, there
It's
you go.
WonderCon episode 35. So
Wow, that was like I was gonna say, wow, that was like a year ago, and I'm like, yeah,
Uh-huh.
it was.
it was 35 episodes ago.
Yeah. Oh, hey, there you go. Yeah.
So-
No, I'm actually. Yeah, I gotta talk to WonderCon and use my super RL street cred to get in for free. So
It shouldn't be too difficult.
no,
Um,
I'm kind of a big deal. No, I'm actually not at all. Don't believe me when I say that.
But in the weeks coming up, we have a stretch here where we're not doing too much, so we're just going to plow through some letters. Maybe we'll do what I'd like to do actually coming up in the next month. Maybe is another. We've got like 3 or 4 people have sent us in bits of text to edit, and
Oh.
I'd love to get Foos back on and just hack through one of them for one episode.
Yeah, figure out what day we can wake him up at like 6 in the morning and make him be on our
Exactly.
show.
Or since we won't have football, do something at like 1 in the afternoon on Sunday, maybe.
That's right. Life is getting back to the 6 months of the year where, Persephone goes back to the underworld and there is no football.
And there's no football, right? So maybe we'll do one of those. Maybe we'll do another lightning round episode. But I think we're not too far behind on questions right now. So.
No, we shouldn't need a lightning round until at least like the summer.
Right. And so I think that'll do it for this one.
Yeah.
I feel like it's kind of a letdown after our live episode. I feel like I want
I
somebody
think the next
to come
10
on and-
episodes is going to feel like that.
That bitch.
We're still in like live show afterglow.
Yeah, I know.
Or it's just like, these are like the obligatory, follow-up orgasms that are never as good as the first big one.
Right.
Sorry, we made like a resolution to make this show like yippier.
Well, write in more questions about like adult writing or something. I don't
Yeah.
know. We don't have that many of them right now.
As Fuzz says, happy fapping.
Yes. So write us emails, unsheathedpodcast@gmail.com. We are Unsheathed on Fur Affinity. We are going to be posting sometime in the next couple weeks the challenges that Coulson challenged us to do.
Yep.
KM and I are both working on them, so I think what we're going to do is just post them on the Unsheathed account and have people vote in the comments as to who they think did which.
Okay.
Either that or, my other idea was just get 2 people on the show who aren't us to read the various stories and then have people vote. But
Okay.
we'll see how they go. I'm Kyell on Fur Affinity, if you want to check me out there. I'm Kyle Gold on Twitter. That's the thing.
And LJ.
And LJ, right. LJ and Twitter, Kyle Gold. You go.
Yeah. I am K.M. Hirosaki on all of those. And I've actually been making good on my New Year's resolution to use my journals more often.
Yay.
So I've actually been like posting updates and information and insights and mysterious time fragments and other things. So go ahead and check that out on both my FA and my LJ. I cross post everything, so whichever one you want to read that.
Please do. It's all very interesting. So thanks for your emails. Wow, I'm really just all disconcerted.
And your listenership. And you're the one person in the room who hasn't been drinking wine.
Yeah, I know. I'm just back to Coke Zero, but I don't know. Kit's flustering me somehow. Good night, and
I don't think all your talk about knowing how to give a good blowjob must have gotten him impatient.
yeah, I guess so. But anyway, good night, and that bitch.